Now I'm plumbing up all these fittings, the basin, the shower and everything else, and what I'm using is these male iron to copper compression fittings, which basically screw into the bottom of the fitting like that. Now the idea of this is I'm going to run every single one of these supplies separately back to the manifold, because I don't like to have T's joining that one to that one and all those potential leaks behind the scenes. So we do it the way that they do it in continental Europe, which is to bring everything back to one central manifold, so you can isolate that. If for any reason you need to service one of the taps, you can just turn it off and leave all the rest of it in use. So it's really good. So I just want to show you one little tip, one little thing that I've learned over the years. A lot of the leaks I've been to as an emergency plumber have been because people have used a bit of PTFE tape. Nothing wrong with PTFE tape, provided you put enough of it on, you can actually make quite a reasonable seal with it. But what sometimes happens is as you thread that in, it runs up the thread slightly. So although it's a wonderful product, there is always that potential, especially on mains pressure, because now we're dealing with unvented cylinders and all the rest of it. The mains pressure is a lot more than it used to be. So we don't want any problems behind all this tiling. You know, we want to make sure that everything that's done behind here is absolutely the best that it can be. So one little trick that I've done all my plumbing life, if you like, is to break the threads just with the edge of a hacksaw blade, and you just go round and you just scratch up that shiny thread. Now some people only do this on chrome threads, but if you do it on all threads, all male iron threads that you're using in this situation, and I'm not talking about this one, let me just make that clear. I'm not talking about this one because that doesn't do anything to seal it. That seal is done with that olive inside there. So what we're talking about is what they call the male iron thread here, which is that one. Now I've made that just a little bit rough and coarse. So if you then put your PTFE tape on, it's got somewhere to grab and it doesn't tend to run up the threads in quite the same way. This is Loctite. This is the thread, sealing thread that we use now. Comes in a nice handy little pack. So you just wrap that round, and actually you don't even need to get it into the grooves. They say don't bother. That will now thread up. You don't need any paste with it or anything like that. It's got kind of a waxy feel on it anyway. And when that goes in, it's a lot tighter. And the great thing is that if you're doing things like outside taps, you can back the thread up slightly. If you've gone too far and the tap isn't quite upright, you can back your thread off. Now that, I know 100% certain that will not leak. And I don't just mean won't leak for the next year or so, I mean it won't leak. You come back to that in 20, 30 years time, it'll still be a good seal. It's basically going back to something we used to have years ago, which was Boss White and hemp, which was a lovely system which produced perfect threads. I mean, if you ever try to get those threads undone now, threads that were done 100 years ago with Boss White and hemp, still good, and they're still hard to get undone. The problem with Boss White and hemp is it used to harbour bacteria. So for a long time, we were forced into the situation of using PTFE thread, but now this is kind of the modern substitute. Doesn't support any bacteria, perfectly good for drinking water, and that's important because actually here, this is a bath and basin, and people do like to get a glass of water from the bath and basin, so we have to make sure that everything is done as per the regs.
So you said 100%?
Yeah.
Okay, now a lot of the youngsters nowadays, they like 110,
yeah,
200%, like
yeah.
1000%.
Yeah.
You not fancy any of those numbers?
I don't, because 100%, is as good as it gets, and the rest of it is like people going, oh, that's super good, that's super good, you know? It devalues the language. As far as I'm concerned, 100% is 100%. Doesn't need to be qualified, doesn't need to have bits added onto it. You can't get better than certain, can you?
No, absolutely.
I'm going to do these with PTFE tape because I need to take them out at some point, so I don't need them to be that tight, and we'd very soon see if there was any leak on that. But they do supply debris stops for all these fittings to keep the tile adhesive out of them when the tiling's going on. But I like to pressure test every single fitting. I want all this up to mains pressure and some. So I'm going to put this up to 3 bar. So all the time the tiling and the boarding is going on, all this pipe work will be under mains pressure, and we'll know if there's any problems with it, which I'm fairly confident there won't be. Now we've got a lovely fitting up here to put our shower head on, which is great, but I've got to make this up. I've got to put a male iron to compression fitting so I can run the pipework from the shower valve up to here. And the easiest way to do it is to take it off the plate. And you'll notice, by the way, I'll just show you this while I'm here. You've got a thick washer, you've got a thin washer, so you've got a few options here. You've also got a nylon washer there. So it depends how far out you need to have this. Now, these are all different. So it depends on the shower head you're using, but the best thing to do is get the shower head out of the box, work it out, work out how much of that thread you need protruding through the tiling in order to get the shower head on. And as I say, they all vary, but the last thing you want to do is get it all tiled up and find that this is either sticking out too much or not enough. So you can just put whichever spacer washer you want behind it or in front of it to reduce or increase the amount of pipework there. So very simple. So the reason I took this off, because I'm going to make this fitting up with the male iron compression, attach the pipework to it, make sure that's nice and tight, then I can just thread the whole thing back in one piece, and it saves me fiddling around behind the scenes there, so it just makes life easy. Now I've put my backing plate in, I'm ready to fit the shower valve now. This one is not that forgiving in terms of adjustability, so we need to get that plumb, because we obviously don't want it sitting in the wall out of true. Fair enough, that's easy enough, but I also need to have it in line with this bottom outlet, which is going to be where the hand spray is, and also the shower head up there. Now I could do this, I used to do this all the time with a dirty old level like this. So that's fair enough, I can get that line, you know, and I know that's upright, so we're pretty happy with that. But then I need a line back onto the middle of this valve, and best will in the world I can do it with a pencil, but it could be a couple of millimeters out. Now the only reason that couple of millimeters matters, well, there's two things. One is that when people are in the shower, they've got nothing to do except pick holes in your work or the bath, you know. So bathrooms, very critical in that way, because people are just lying there relaxing in the bath, looking at the tiling, something's a little bit out, they just fixate on it, and sooner or later they're going to get the spirit level, put it up there and curse you. So it's important for me to have everything absolutely spot on. But the other reason it's important for me to have everything spot on is because the tiles will always show you where something's slightly out. You know, if a tiler comes in and he puts a lovely vertical row grout line in there, and one of your fittings is very slightly off, it just jumps out a mile. So in order to get this kind of precision, you may think this is overkill, but once you've got yourself a laser, you find loads and loads of uses for it. So we stick the laser on, that will give us a vertical line. So that vertical line is going straight through the middle of that hand spray outlet there. It's going up through the middle of our mounting board. So I've marked off the pencil lines there. And also, if you look up here, it's going through the middle of our plate. So I've marked a center line on the plate. Now the great thing is using these plates, this is why I really love this system from Abacus, because these easy plan plates suggest exactly what they are. They're easy. So if you look at this one down here, if we weren't quite right there, we can just move it over on the line. Just gives you that tiny little bit of adjustability, but of course once the tiling's done you won't have that adjustability, so get it right at this point. But that little IMEX laser, well worth the money. You don't need a green beam one, you can buy lasers now around the 100 quid mark, and this one is worth its weight in gold. It's coming in for all kinds of little jobs. The other thing I just mentioned about lasers is that you get quite a big thick beam with them. That could be as much as 2mm with some lasers. So you need to decide which side of the line you're working on, or you go for the middle of the line. But if you say, okay, I'll go to the left hand side of the line, then that's where you want to keep to all the time, because if you go dancing around left to right, left to right, left to right, by the end of a long wall you could be 2 or 3 mil out. Very simple little thing, but I just thought I'd mention that while I was here. And with that in line, I can now screw my valve to that back plate and I'll know that it's perfect. Hopefully we've got an arrow on here. This is up, so we know which way round this valve is going. And then you can see I'll just take that protective shroud off just for a minute. I'll put those back on afterwards. But now you can see we need that in the middle, and my line has got to go right through that middle of that valve. So with that in place, I can mark my screw holes if I had 3 hands. Okay, everyone makes mistakes, and this is my mistake. Confession time. I fitted the wrong valve. So all that I just said about the laser and lining it up is all still perfectly relevant, but I was showing the wrong valve. And when I fitted it, I thought, oh, hang on, we need one for the shower head and one for the hand spray, so that diverter has to have 2 outlets. The other one only had a single outlet, so that's going on the bath filler. Luckily I swapped them over, same screw, same casting, so it wasn't the end of the world. But it just shows you, you could actually get to the point sometimes where you fit all this stuff and tie it in and then go, no. So there you are, I discovered it in time. Now I've got all my pipes threaded through from that central manifold. I've got to connect them up to the shower valve. Now it's clearly marked here. We've got red hot on the left, cold on the right, so that's easy enough to do. I've also got this diverter here, which is going to go down to the hand spray and up to the overhead shower, so I've got to make sure I get that one right. So that one goes onto here, and it's a combination of 2 different things here, compression fittings and push fit fittings. I'd rather use compression fittings throughout the whole of the job, but I don't want to put too many fittings in line, so in order to rationalize it, I'm just putting the fittings in here. But what it means is that everything in the way of joints is being done within this box section here. So worst comes to the worst, this is where I'd have to make any repair, but if I make sure I do the job right in the first place, there won't be any comebacks. And I will be fully pressure testing all this before I start boarding and tiling. This is where I get the comments, because I always put a little bit of PTFE tape around the olives when I make a compression fitting, and people argue with me, including the manufacturers of these fittings, that it's completely unnecessary to do. The time that I didn't do it on my last job, I left one fitting where I thought, oh, I won't bother doing that, and I cranked it up and then I could hear this drip, 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 so I had to take one of the boards out and remake the fitting with my trusty PTFE tape. I've been out to many leaking compression fittings over the years, where sometimes I use a bit of plumber's paste. That used to be the good old standby, is that people liked a bit of Boss White on there or whatever jointing compound. Hawk White is pretty good, or liquid PTFE tape. The only trouble with using those on shower valves is that you can get gunge washed up behind the valve itself into that thermostatic mechanism, and then you've got to dismantle the valve in order to clean it out. So I just do my little fittings up like this. As I say, I'll be pressure testing it all, so it should be fine, but that's going to withstand a test of about 5 bar. So I was chatting away to the cameraman, was no cameraman,
Yes, you were.
and I put the wrong pipe in the wrong fitting, so it just goes to show. That's why you need to have everything labelled up and check it as you go. This one here with the diverter obviously is supposed to go up here to the shower head, so I put it in the wrong ones. But that's nice, I've done it now. All's well that ends well. I use that phrase a lot. You may have noticed, eagle-eyed viewers, that I'm not using one of these, which has got a lovely internal seal, and also that. This is a great fitting really, because you've got an internal seal on the pipe, and you've also got a seal where it goes into the fitting, so that makes an absolutely lovely watertight seal there. And then of course you've got the olive on the outside of the pipe. But there is a problem with these fittings, and they won't allow them on compression, because what you've got is that shoulder that sits there. See the shoulder? So when that fitting goes all the way in, that shoulder is sitting there inside the fitting. I'll just show you, right? That's
It's easy for you to say.
that shoulder is sitting there, so that piece of pipe, that liner, is now out there. So by the time we put the olive on the end, it means that that olive is very close to the end of a liner. And they have had cases, never happened to me, I've never seen it, but they have had cases where they've squeezed off the end. So what they give you is another fitting which is suitable for compression fittings, and you notice a difference. It's the same length, but it doesn't have that shoulder on it, so it just goes that little bit further in to the pipe. And therefore, if you look, I'll just mock one up on the outside. If you see the difference there, you can see that that olive is now sitting squarely over the liner, whereas with the other one, it's on a bit of a wing and a prayer. Do you see how close that is to the end? So that's the reason why we have to keep our wits about us and swap over pipes. There's a lot of old iron up there, which is just historical from the old gravity fed central heating systems all over the place, and I was just trying to get some of it out. I hate leaving it in there, but it's a great saw for this. It really goes well, but you can't get it into all the little corners and the nooks and crannies, so I'm going to try the recip saw. The only thing we've really got to get out is that one in the corner there. So I'll go and get a spinner, try that. Try everything, really, that's the only way, try everything. Got Juby today, he's a cameraman. I've worked with him for many years, and actually he is a good cameraman, but when I've been struggling, his little hand has come into the shop to give me a bit of a hand.
His little hand?
No, he just can't. He can't. To be fair, he taught me everything I know.
Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Hands.
Oh, yeah.
He's big. I would say he's equal of hands.
His normal sized hand, cameraman's hand, would come into the shop to help me out and hold something.
Taught me everything I know.
Yeah. Not like me, where I give you a kick.
Do you know what it is, mate? I'll tell you what it's all about in this game is attitude. It's about wanting to do a good job, and you do a good job, but you know, little things like this bracket up here, we're just going to strengthen this thing so much that it is the most solid thing in the house. All good. That's saying something, because this is a very, very solid house.
That's not going.
That's not going anywhere. I'll tell you what, mate, might be time for a cup of tea. That's lovely. That is great, because that gives a lovely support for. Oh, you found it. You found a study.
Oh yeah, it only took me about 38 attempts, but I did find one.
Those stud finders, I mean, they're so hit and miss, aren't they?
Well, it's got the drill bit. That's how you find it. Because this is so thick and strong, it doesn't matter if you're sitting in a bit. It's so narrow, you've still got like an inch and a half for it to sit on. Nice.
Tell Nicola how fast Juby is, just in case she's forgotten.
I don't think she's forgotten.
Got a corner pipe out, look.
Oh yeah, that's good work.
Gone.
That is it, ready for that mirror. LED mirror.
The mirror that Nicola can't see through. She can do the tiptoes.
Yeah, that's right. It's not Hobbit compatible.
Do you know why it's like that? Do you know why it's that high? It's got a lock with the bottom of this. Yeah?
Yeah.
That's what Chris is all about. He doesn't care about whether people are tall enough to take advantage of it.
Slowly done.
There's a blooming screw sticking out there. I should have. Do you know what? I looked at that yesterday. Thought I must cut that off. It was poking through. I didn't bother. There you go. A cut a day. It's always good to leave a little bit of blood on the seam because then it makes the customer think they're getting real value for money. I'll tell you what. Whenever I cut myself, I'm amazed that it's not tea that comes out. Stop bleeding because my blood is full of cholesterol. That's not a joke, by the way. It is full of cholesterol.
Yeah? What's your cholesterol level?
10.
10?
Yeah.
10 out of 10?
Yeah, it's not bad lifestyle. It's due to hereditary thing. It's a Viking thing, basically.
They might make a link to tea. It could be the tea.
No, it's not a dietary thing because I've got the best diet in the world in terms of everything the doctor said, oh, you need to do.
Which doctor?
My doctor, the doctor that when I don't know how it happened, but I had a test and came up with a very, very high cholesterol. So he phoned my wife up and he said, tell him to get in to see me straight away. So she phoned me up at work. She said, the doctor wants to see you immediately. He's got some results through. So this is what I do. I put the gaffer tape over the top because if you don't, the plaster just comes off.
Not too tight.
No. If I pass out,
We'll know why.
we'll loosen it.
Just your little tourniquet.
So, anyway, so the doctor said, come and see me straight away. So, it's a German fella, and the Germans are renowned for not having a sense of humour. I don't understand that because this doctor is really quite funny. He said to me, I want you to take these statins, and I'll put you on a big dose of statins, try and get this down a bit, So I said to him, have I got to take these statins forever? And he said, no, only for the rest of your life.
That's good, I like it.
So I thought that's good. And guess what? I don't take them.
No.
I don't take them. I don't like them.
They take away too much.
They're not good. They're not good for me. I'm not giving advice to anybody, but for me, I'd rather live with the cholesterol. I've got the cholesterol down a bit. It's now around 7, but I've been reading a lot of stuff on it. And as I say, it is a bit of a hereditary thing. My father had it, he lived till 90. Both my sons have got it. So I'll see how I get on. Watch this post. If you don't see me next week, you'll know why. 3/5 of the world's surface is covered in water, so this little bit won't make any difference at all. When I started plumbing, it was all copper, even lead. I kid you not, probably my first job was digging the trench for a lead water main to be put in. So that would have been the very end of the 1960s, and it was a church and they were having a brand new lead water main put in. Obviously that's now illegal. I don't have to wipe all the lead joints and do all that stuff. Spent hours blooming underfloor boards doing lead joints above my head with blooming molten solder running down my arms, thinking, why the hell have I been involved in this? And I could have been a brain surgeon already if I'd paid attention at school.